Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. At the end of my Was It Any Good Though series, I came to a conclusion that I suspected would be the case, but wouldn't have truly known until I'd looked at each class in the level of detail that I did. And that is that every class can be considered good, and while some are more favoured, there is really no class that is just straight up bad or useless. Each class has their own unique identity and iconic spells. Not everyone needs to have a CC, not everyone needs to have an interrupt or even a DPS cooldown, and while some classes can do things others cannot, it's often also the case vice versa. So in this new series, I want to look at the ways you can make the most out of your chosen class and find out how to play to your class's strengths. The points I'll be looking at will differ from class to class in relation to their strengths, as they aren't all shared across the board. Today I'll be looking at the Hunter and we'll cover these points. Leveling Powerhouse, preparing yourself, avoiding the stereotypes around Hunters, solo capabilities in PvE, World PvP, and then some macros and add-ons. So this week, let's do things a little bit different. I'll be doing Hunter today and then Paladin next, as they were so close together. For me, Hunters are one of the classes that gets one of the worst reputations, despite being able to do so many cool things. Let's jump straight into it and see what makes the Hunter strong. Hunters for me have the best time leveling in the entire game out of every class. Things start off a bit sketchy for sure, but at level 10 when you get that quest to finally pick up your pet, things really start going well. Whilst you're chilling at the back, your pet can take care of threat. On top of this, Hunters aren't as mana hungry like Warlocks are and can mostly just auto attack and take things down still at a pretty decent rate. You get a wide choice of pets whilst you level, and the go-to tends to be cats for most people as they put out the most damage, and more damage means more threat, which means less melee range Hunter, which is overall a good thing. Also, the Prowl ability combined with Shadow Meld is an OP AFK combo. Owls the sold as well, as they have an AoE attack power reduction, which can really help out lower the damage incoming for your pet. Most Hunters will opt into a Beast Mastery specialization during the leveling process, so you can power up your pet that little bit more. Something along this line will be solid for leveling. Starting off with capping out the Beast Mastery tree and importantly getting Pathfinding for that big speed boost from aspect to the Cheetah pre-level 40. And Bestial Swiftness that makes it easier for your pet to go from mob to mob outdoors, allowing it to pick up aggro easier. Once you're done in Beast Mastery, you can put the remaining points into a standard marksman build. If you're looking for a chill leveling experience on an alt, or maybe still progressing on your main, then I can definitely recommend giving Hunter a shot. The difference is actually unbelievable after having played and leveled certain classes, like Warriors for example. Avoiding the stereotypes, it had to be in here, right? Not being a Huntard, how can you mitigate the pitfalls that you can fall into every day as a Hunter? And believe me, they have more ways to fail than most, hence this rather unfortunate nickname they're now associated with. First things first, pet control. I would aim to pick up good habits early on, and then add them to your keybinds as soon as possible, so you're confident in keeping your pet in line. Your pet is not only a large portion of your damage, but also keeps aggro off you. So first of all, slash petattack or shift plus T by default on the targeting set on your keybinds will send your pet into attack, and you can have this bound to an auto attack key, but it's better to separate it to its own key so you don't have issues when you're on multiple targets. Secondly, pet passive. This will call your pet back to you, and this macro will work even if your pet is also considered in a passive state already, but you've sent it into attack. Most of the time it's a good idea to have your pet on passive instead of defensive in case you get hit by a random ranged attack and your pet suddenly runs off to go and meet this aggressor. Aggressive has its uses specifically versus stealth targets, as it will likely hit them before they can hit the Hunter. Also, it can be useful when contesting respawns. Also, I would just go into your keybinds and straight up unbind the pet aggressive key. If you ever need it, chances are you can just do it manually than rather press it by mistake, and have your cat happily run into the closest pack of elites in a dungeon and cause a wipe. Next up, tab targeting. I always use tab personally. If you do as well, you may need to be extra careful on the Hunter. Sometimes tabbing is a bit inconsistent, shall we say, and doesn't quite tab target to what you intended. Now, normally this isn't an issue, but when your auto attack is ranged, a small mistake can be a big problem. Just watch out in dungeons if there are many mobs around you. Feign Death control. Feign Death may be one of your best abilities as a Hunter, it's got so many uses. Rather unfortunately though, it's prone to being quite inconsistent. If you Feign Death just after running, it can bug out. If you Feign Death with right click held down, it can bug out. As a rule of thumb, if you're going to feign, stop, wait 1 second or as close as you can to that without pressing anything on your mouse or your keyboard, and then feign. The only way feign should fail doing this is if it's resisted, which can happen and it's just bad luck, but you can mitigate that bad luck by just waiting before you feign. Stock up in town. Just like a lone ranger in the wilderness with your faithful beast, the hunter needs to prepare. The difference in damage between a sad and a happy pet is absolutely enormous. And you can check what food your pet uses on the pet interface if you're unsure. Also, the higher level your pet, the better tier food it will need, and dismissing or having your pet die will decrease its happiness a lot. Also, don't forget ammo. Make sure you upgrade your quiver or ammo pouch where possible, as they give solid ranged attack speed upgrades. Alliance can get a decent option for quivers or ammo pouches around the mid-level 20s from the Night Watch quest series in Duskwood. The Horde don't really have an equivalent for this, but there are some decent crafted ones like the medium pouch or quivers though. Finally, consider what items will improve your combat stats. Agility is big for hunters, as is crit and hit rating. Strength doesn't really do anything important for you, and your melee weapon is generally just going to be a stat stick, only to be used when no other options are available, so don't go too crazy with that knee button. Just like the Lone Ranger class fantasy you can apply for a hunter, they certainly jump into that very well in the way they play out. Hunters are one of the more competent classes to run solo content on, through their pet, traps, extreme long range, combined with speed from cheetah and concussive shot. You're able to kite out and defeat many enemies that other classes simply wouldn't be able to compete with. At the end of the day, if they can't hit you, they can't kill you. And some of my earliest memories myself on WoW are seeing what I could solo on the hunter, and to this day I still enjoy that style of play that soloing things brings. This has been exemplified super well recently with Dire Maul coming out. We've seen so many hunters putting on a masterclass of how to juggle aggro between themselves and their pet on the last boss in Dire Maul North, King Gordok, so they're able to get that sweet tribute loot. If you want more details on the full run, you can check out my last video on the gold making guide in Dire Maul. You know what the cool thing about hunters being such a great solo class is? Blizzard recognised it too, all the way back in vanilla, the epic hunter questline, starting from Molten Core, as you go up against 4 challenging demons across Azeroth, each testing a different area of the hunter's skill set: kiting, melee combat, mana efficiency, and so on. Also, different hunter abilities are empowered to have additional effects on these demons, either rooting them, silencing them, or a whole bunch of different effects. I don't want to give too much away here if you're still waiting to do this questline, as it's really an epic. Though people have figured out what to do these days, going in blind would still make it a real challenge. Hunters are one of the top classes in World PvP, simply because they can pick their fights so easily. A hunter getting the drop has a solid chance to defeat anyone. However, if someone gets on you first, it can very much go the other way quickly. The hunter PvP trinket can remove stuns, roots, and slows, allowing you to stay on the move easier during fights. As a hunter, your strongest move in PvP is the Scatter Trap combo. Since Scatter and Freezing Trap share diminishing returns, your trap will last for around 10 seconds tops, but that should be more than enough time for you to get distance and bandage up if you can. Remember, you can't use traps in combat, so you must feign death before you lay a trap down. There are a few options for PvP specializations. You more or less always want Scatter Shot though, whatever you're going. It's just too useful to interrupt range classes or help you get ranged back on melee. Survival offers decent upgrades to, well, survivability surprisingly, through deterrence, improved wing clip, and endurance. Also, sure-footed is pretty cool. And you could, if you want, take the point off True Shot aura in favour of Counterattack if you want more options versus melee classes. A Druid can be a tough matchup if they play correctly, as they can get easily back on you through power shifting, dash, and feral charge. A Druid will look to apply all their damage over time effects on you and then stay as close as they can in bear form. Scatter trapping them out of form is your key to win. Get a Viper Sting on them to pressure their mana bar. This one is really, can the Druid kill you before going out of mana from shifting and healing? If you manage to maintain range, this one should be possible. Improved wing clip RNG can make a huge difference here as well. Against Moonkins, they'll try to do much the same thing. If they sit there hard casting, they won't have a chance due to the combined spell knockback of you and your pet. Versus a warrior, having a trap at the start of the fight or whether they get charging can decide the fight more or less instantly, as warriors have very good counterplayer options against the range abuse of hunters. Once a warrior is on you, he can disarm you to stop wing clip spam. You need to use deterrence here. Additionally, warriors have 3 ways to taunt your pet, which will then interrupt your scatter trap as it's forced to attack the warrior. If you see a warrior going into defensive stance, he's likely trying to disarm you or taunt your pet. This can be an early warning for you. If you do land a scatter trap, the warrior's intercept range is 25 yards. You can outrange this easily with your auto attacks. The warrior will likely kill off your pet at this point, so you need to kite him out at range and not let him get out of combat for charge as well. This is quite a high skill matchup and can go either way with quite a lot of variables. Rogues are potentially an issue. Once again, the hunter has counterplay, it's just whether or not you can execute it. Flare reveals and prevents stealth and vanish. Hunter's Mark allows you to see through stealth but doesn't actually stop it from being used, so be careful. Have your pet on aggressive for this one, it may be able to pop the rogue out of stealth before their opener. Counterattack is also big in this matchup. Once you get out of range, make sure Hunter's Mark and Serpent Sting stay active. If you live through the opener, this one should be doable. Paladins are an endurance fight. You should assume they have bubble for most fights as well. You can trinket Hammer of Justice and need to kite in between freedom casts as much as you can. The high armor value and self-healing can make this an issue. They can cleanse Viper Sting as well. You can bait them into wasting mana on a cleanse with the rank 1 Sting though. Scatter trap when they get close to dish out your range damage. Finally, if they're Reckoning Spect, you're going to have been stacking that up super hard during the kiting, and they're quite likely just to knock off half your health in one hit once they get in range of you, so this one can potentially be hard. Shaman are a hard ask to win against. They can eat your traps with a grounding totem, so make sure you keep an eye out and have your pet sent in on it as soon as possible. Enhancement Shaman should be able to be kited out. Once they get in range with Frost Shock though, the spam is going to be pretty real. They aren't too mana efficient but do hit hard. Elemental is where the real trouble is at. Eye of the Storm will be proccing a lot with you and your pet hitting them, meaning they can spam you down in a few spells, especially if they get crits on, well, basically anything they do. You really need the opener here with an aim shot into a scatter trap reset into another aim shot. In the Hunter Mirror, the main thing to do is to avoid aim shot whilst landing your own, either through Feign Death or scatter trapping them. If they're moving in towards you, assume it's for a scatter. You can fear their pet if you manage to land a trap successfully as well, and potentially bandage at this point. There's not really too much to say in the mirror. Priest can be a tough fight. Your only real advantage is your range, as they will outdamage you easily if you stay in their range. Whilst you can Viper Sting Priest, which they can't dispel, you'll need to go for a fast fight as their damage over time effects and shield cooldown will outlast you pretty easily. Remember that Mind Flay has a max 24 yard when talented, so keep at range and blast them as much as possible. If they ever try and drop out Shadow Form to heal, then you can move into Scatter Trap them straight away, as they take more physical damage out of Shadow Form. Mages are a big ask beat if the mage is good. These guys have so many options to make your life terrible. First of all, they will abuse the dead zone hard where you can't hit them by using Frost Nova. Many mages will blink in and Nova and then sheep you and kill off your pet as well. Mages have an easy time getting out of your scatter trap with Ice Block 2, which they can potentially have 2 of throughout the duration of a fight with Cold Snap. Trinket Nova when it looks like a shatter combo's coming, and keep Viper Sting up. Your real win condition is making them cast their less efficient spells and going through their mana bar, as straight up out damaging them is likely not going to happen. Treat Scatter and Feign Death more like interrupts than tools for trapping, as they're just going to ice block it, and avoid shatter combos at all costs. Finally, Warlocks. This one again is very hard as you've no way to get out of fear. A single fear landed is pretty much a loss in this fight. You can outrange it, but they'll still be able to apply their damage over time effects for you, as well as Death Coil. If they have a Void Walker up for sacrifice as well as Hellstone, you're gonna need some insane crit RNG to win. Viper Sting can be decent once again if they need to tap, as their spells cost a lot of mana, and if they need to life tap, it basically translates to damage for you. A good opener into a scatter trap can land you a window, as long as they don't have a Void Walker out. Now on to some macros. As mentioned earlier, there are some good macros for your pets that are quite handy, like /petpassive and /petattack. The following macro will initiate your ranged attack, but won't cancel it if you spam it. There's also a statattack macro for your pet that incorporates Hunter's Mark in there. And the following macro will activate your Raptor Strike and then use the other 2 abilities if they are currently usable. And finally, after talking about Scatter Trap so much, here are some macros to make it more consistent so your pet doesn't accidentally mess it up. So it's just Scatter Shot and Feign Death Freezing Trap with Pet Passive put in there really. As for add-ons, out of all the add-ons, there's only one that really matters for hunters, and that is a swing timer. Not only does the hunter have time between its attacks, but there is time for loading and firing your weapon as well. Also, you can clip your auto attack by using abilities, so I would 100% advise getting WeaponSwingTimer for this. I also like using OmniCC. It helps you see the remaining time on your CC effects like Frost Trap or Scatter, or potentially even Fear Beast. Finally, ClassicAuraDurations is pretty great. It lets you track your damage over time effects a bit easier. This generally isn't such a big deal for hunters, but it can help you with your duration on things like your sting or maybe your hunter's bark. And that's it for the roundup for hunters. It really is a unique playstyle, mixing the mobility of melee with the power of ranged, with a pet thrown in there for good measure. It's definitely a tough class to master, and I remember saying on my Was It Any Good Though video that I believe hunters are easy to pick up and one of the most difficult classes to master in the game. I really just want to reiterate that point here. A hunter taking full advantage of their toolkit is something that has counterplay options and ways to come out on top in any scenario. And as mentioned earlier, I'll be covering Paladin next, so what do you think I will cover for Paladin? I know people like to meme on this class a little bit, but the worse people look upon a class, the more chance there is to shine, in my opinion. Let me know what you think, I'm quite interested. If you like what you see, give the video a like and subscribe, as there's plenty more to come. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Take care. Bye.